So imagine it's 2019 and I've just taken LSD for the first time. And I've had no previous kind of psychedelic experiences. I've smoked a little bit of weed, but apart from that, I've just for the first time taken LSD. And it turned out to be quite a high dose, probably like 200 milligrams or something. And my brain just breaks. It basically breaks. I see reality for what it is for the first time ever. And I just lose my mind. I just turn into kind of a raging lunatic, a monkey basically. I start making monkey noises, all sorts of weird stuff, basically. And at the time, I didn't know what was happening and I didn't understand what was happening. And the next day, I more or less just returned back to my normal life. So I grew up in like London area. So it's like I just returned back to my normal life. Everyone around me has this somewhat of like a Western mindset where this isn't something like normal or that anybody knows anything about. And so this is kind of where truly my spiritual journey started. It kind of started from taking LSD and just like going crazy. And then I didn't realize it at the time, but there was a natural progression that was going on and questions that kept coming up in my mind. So I thought a lot about why people get into spirituality and especially like when they get into spirituality as well. So I noticed that there's two factors I think that really govern whether someone falls down the spiritual path, and the spiritual path being of like raising consciousness, understanding what consciousness is to the extent that you can understand it, but that essentially like there is just one thing, one consciousness. And if you're watching this video, you probably get this, but at the time, yeah, nobody understood this around me. And essentially, I realized two things govern why people get into this stuff. One, and it's everyone's favorite, is suffering. So you need to have some level of suffering to actually fall down this path. Or the second, or actually both are needed, is curiosity. If you suffer without curiosity, you're not really going to question your existence and you're not going to keep looking for answers until you're truly satisfied. And yeah, the curiosity is just, you're just constantly asking those questions, and the suffering is needed to basically kind of light a fire under you so you actually get moving, get looking, get searching for answers. Because I've noticed like people that haven't fallen in the spiritual path, either they're not suffering that much, so they don't look outside themselves to fall into the spiritual path, or they're just not very curious about their existence. Like they're suffering, but they don't question why they need to suffer. They don't question if suffering even makes sense. Like, is that something, like they just assume and accept that that's like a default state of human existence and that this is just the way life is. And if you stumbled upon this video, there's a chance that you're probably not like that. You probably couldn't just take reality at face value. You had to ask the questions. And I was the same way. So I kept asking the questions until I was satisfied. So initially, I started looking for the answers in kind of Western psychology and philosophy. Like I read and watched a lot of videos on psychology and philosophy and kind of stumbled upon these Stoic ideas, and kind of from those Stoic ideas kind of got pivoted into this hustle culture mentality where growth is the pinnacle of like human existence, and that everything that we do should be kind of for the evolution of ourselves. I didn't really understand why, but it was like, this is the only thing that makes sense. I kind of got into absurdist philosophies where it's like life is inherently meaning, and the meaning that you gain from it is by kind of rebelling against life itself. You create your meaning through rebellion, through work, through growth, through evolution, through just the persistence and the resilience that you have towards life. And so I was kind of around this place where I started just, I still wasn't happy. I still wasn't satisfied. The questions still weren't answered. And I was experimenting a bit more with psychedelics at the time. And the questions just kept coming up that there must be more to life than just this inherent struggle. And the idea that had to kind of make meaning from the struggle and that was going to be life just didn't sit well with me. And so I continued my exploration and I started looking into some stuff that Naval Ravikant, I'm not sure if you've heard who he is, but he's just this like entrepreneur, and he's quite wise. He has like this whole stuff on happiness. He speaks about meditation. And then he recommended some books that I basically took his whole list of books and I downloaded every single one because I just loved the way this guy thought. He was just so clear in his thinking and I felt like he knew something I didn't know. So he spoke about meditation and I got into these books. And the first book I think that I picked up was Love, Freedom and Aloneness by Osho. I had no idea who Osho was. I just grabbed this book and I started reading. And weirdly enough, my experiences with psychedelics and just life in general, I was like, wait a minute, there's like a lot of truth to this. And I had this like Western mindset of like logic, skepticism, doubt, question everything, get to the bottom of everything, which the stuff that Osho was writing in his book was kind of aligned with that. He was like, don't take my word for it. Just question these ideas yourself. And so I started questioning the ideas more and more. And I started reading the book and I didn't understand pretty much anything. I was kind of confused and disorientated. I was like, but no, like life is pain. Like this is idealistic. Like I can't be free of suffering. Like what are you talking about, etc. Like detachment felt a lot like apathy and like a dislike for kind of the world. But he addressed some of those concerns as well. But essentially my like Western hustle culture minded brain couldn't absorb these ideas. So I started reading more. I started slowly understanding. And like one of the biggest transition points for like my Western brain to spirituality was I viewed like these spiritual concepts and ideas as kind of complex metaphors for emotional and mental states that can't be simply described with like psychology. And so that helped me kind of get like a grounding in this spiritual world. It made me feel like it kind of makes sense. Like, okay, like if I don't like take it at complete face value and I take it as a metaphor, it kind of makes sense. Like I can get behind this and there's like a lot of wisdom to this. And slowly, I kind of evolved out of that idea and into something new of like, wow, these like spiritual states they're not just like metaphors talking about emotions. There's stuff beyond the mind. And if you told me like a year ago or 2 years ago, so I titled this video, How I Got on the Spiritual Path at 22. But essentially now I'm 23, almost 24. And yeah, if you told me a year ago or 2 years ago, like there's more to life than your mind, than your logic, than your reasoning, I would have been like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. You're probably a hippie. But I kept progressing and I kept meditating and I kept reading. I read so many books and I kept taking LSD, of course. And so I started questioning these things and I really understood, yeah, this was actually a fact of my conscious experience. And again, I didn't need to believe in anything. And this is kind of the time where I stumbled into Sam Harris, who was like a very hardcore skeptic like me from like a Western mindset. And he also said like, you don't have to believe anything, just pay attention. And my skepticism was kind of slowly being unraveled because nobody that I was listening to told me that I had to believe anything. I was like an atheist beforehand and I didn't really subscribe to any religions and I didn't really follow any dogmatic behaviors. I didn't think that like dogma was a good thing. And I really believed that truth could only exist at the individual level that you discover it for yourself. And so Sam Harris was kind of like a proponent of this idea as well. So I really like took to his work. I downloaded the Waking Up app and then I started just consuming all the podcast, all of the stuff that he was speaking about, that other people there were speaking about, like Joseph Goldstein, Adyashanti is the best. And I just love his work. And a bunch of different other people on the Waking Up app and just on YouTube as well. And now I was really starting to kind of understand what spirituality was and what this whole idea of enlightenment is, or this progression of like your consciousness. And I started seeing the world very differently. And at one point I realized, and I've spoken about this in a previous video, I realized that my priority was honestly truth. I wanted to see what reality was, and I was suffering a lot still. And so I decided to make it like my number one priority, not kind of rejecting the world in a sense, but make it my priority to find truth through the world essentially as well, within, but also while pursuing things that are meaningful to me in the world. So about probably like around 6 months ago or so, I really settled that truth and the spiritual path was kind of at the forefront of my mind, and that I had to prioritize meditation above anything else because I'm always inherently looking for this freedom that I seek elsewhere. So I kind of had a reframe, and I decided that I wanted to be on the spiritual path in that sense as a seeker. But this didn't mean that I spent my days just continuously consuming like spiritual education, because I felt like I got to a certain point where I kind of realized that a lot of the education and the stuff that I needed or to progress was just like my mind was capped. Like the logic level, it can only take you to a certain point. And I realized that experience and actually inquiring into the nature of existence, then questioning it, then seeking knowledge was kind of the route that I wanted to take. And this was also the time where I discovered like Frank Yang and stuff. And I found his message and the videos that he made to just like really open up my mind. And I was basically going in and looking within. And I realized that experiences and just understanding reality had to come from me directly facing it. I couldn't find the answers through spiritual texts or through spiritual masters or videos or this or that, or like traveling or doing this or doing that. I realized that I had to kind of sit and pay attention to my conscious experience. And that's pretty much where I'm at now. It's kind of turned into like an exploration where I'm sharing, I'm creating, and I'm thinking about spirituality, but more so just in the way of like, I'm curious. I just want to know what is happening in my direct experience. And I've noticed that I've come to conclusions like from looking for truth, I found a lot of love as well. And so the kind of way I'm orientating my life now on the spiritual path is like, how can I give back? How can I help others? And I'm not worrying too much about how the universe will fulfill my needs. And there was this kind of cool quote, or I forget where it's from, but this idea that like, just serve and help others and have trust that the universe will automatically fulfill your needs. Because I really think it does. And I've seen that to be the case, where just focus on loving, on mastering your craft, on giving whatever support and basically help to the people around you. And the universe kind of just rewards you for it. It seems to be like some universal law. But anyhow, that's essentially how I got into the spiritual path and kind of where I'm at. And I'm basically using this YouTube channel to share some of those experiences and insights that I've had and that I will continue to have in a way that maybe clicks and resonates with some people. And hopefully these insights can kind of help you just navigate your way along your path, because I know it's an individualistic path and we have to all walk it alone. But I view these like videos and insights as kind of like those lampposts like lighting up the way along the path. And it might just provide some sort of comfort, some sort of direction, and some sort of clarity into where you need to go. Because your path is going to be completely different to my path, but my insights might help you along the way. But yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about in this video. Hopefully you found it interesting, you found it helpful. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Take care.